Video number 3, LATTC, Architecture Technology, Summer 2014, real-time videos with Professor Jose Negrete, going more into detail on how to transform a sphere into a face or into an animal. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go back to the Create tab and select the Sphere tool and click and drag near the origin point in the viewport. And then once the sphere is there, we're going to go to the Modify tab, which is the second tab to the right, and change the radius. Let's make it 6 inches.
It's a big head.
5 inches. Right, and then I'm just going to make sure the sphere is at the origin point, which is 0, 0, 0. So again, to do that, I right-clicked on the Move tool to bring up the Transform Type-In window. And then rather than selecting the text in each of the windows, you can right-click the spinners or these little arrows, and it'll zero it out. So if this had values in each of these, so rather than coming in here and selecting the text and typing 0 and hitting enter, you can right-click the little arrows and it'll zero it out.
And you want to put the gizmo in the middle because it will facilitate the manipulation of the vertices, the edges, and the plane.
Yeah, it's good practice to keep your objects at the origin point, especially if you're starting on just the one object in your scene. So you want to make sure you move your object to 0, 0, 0. And then, like Marcela said, since a face should be symmetrical, you can use the fact that your sphere is at 0 so that you know that if you move something an inch on the right side, it should be the same on the left side. So it helps you with that. So now that the sphere is in place, we're going to go back to the Modify tab and then click on the modifier list. And before we add the Edit Poly modifier, I'm going to add another modifier called Taper. And so this is going to let us change the shape of the sphere just so that it's a little bit tapered like that.
So that face is not really a cylinder. It's more like, it has this rectangular, and when you actually make something shorter from the bottom to the top, it's called taper. So what you're seeing, that is called tapering. You can taper a column, you can taper a building.
And any of these modifiers in here, if you want to just mess around with them, they're always going to have parameters that you can edit. So in this case, I increased the taper amount 0.3, and it did the shape.
So a parameter is basically how you can modify it. So you modify objects through the parameters which describe the object. And it's important to know this language because when you're doing blogging and when you're doing techie talk, you gotta know these things. You modify objects, right, through the parameters, because that's the way somebody will tell you, go to the parameters, and you go, what? So you do need to learn this language. So for the advanced students that already know how to do this, how do you spend this time? Try to begin to manipulate the vocabulary of how do you describe the object.
All right, so back to the modifier list, we're going to add the Edit Poly on top. And you'll notice in the below the modifier list, you have your modifier stack. So if you look at the objects we have here, or the list, we have the sphere at the bottom, and then the taper modifier, which we just added, followed by the Edit Poly. And you'll notice that these have a little light bulb next to them, so you could turn them off if you want to not look at whatever effect that modifier is having on your object, or you could turn them back on. Or if you happen to mess up, or you don't like how it's what your modifier caused, you can just delete it. So if you look here, there's a remove icon. So I didn't like the taper I did, so I can just trash it. And then we go back to the base sphere. Let me undo that though. Okay. Right, so here if we're trying to make a face,
Could we add more vertexes? The reason I want to add more vertexes because our face is more complex. There's a lot of extrusions and penetrations. So if we add more, so how would we add more segments?
right, so normally what we would do is stack another modifier on top of the edit poly, and this modifier is called a turbo smooth. Right, so this gives us more divisions or a denser mesh, and then again you can turn this off or on. Right, so now this lets us go back to the edit poly level and work with a much lower resolution object. So this is easier to look at, fewer polygons. So here we can select some of these polygons and extrude them to add like an eye socket. And if we look at the turbo smooth, it's going to look like that. So this is looking really weird so far, but that's how you would start to add features. So again, that was just extruding one polygon inward. So on the extrude parameters, it was a negative amount so that it goes into the object. Okay, and then let's say we wanted to pull a nose out. Here you can see now, here I'm a little low on polygons, like there's not enough polygons here to add a nose. So in this case I want to add an additional edge, and the way to do that is to go to the edge selection mode, and here I'm going to select a series of vertical edges which go all the way around the sphere. And then I'm going to use an edit edges tool, which is called connect. So this adds a perpendicular edge to the selection I previously made. And if you notice here in the caddy, the little options we have, we can increase the segments, so we could add more than one edge, or we can also use the slide to slide the edge around. Or if we had two or more edges, we can use pinch to slide those around like that. Alright, but we'll keep it at 1 for this and hit OK, the little check mark. And then back to vertex selection. See, now I'm going to pull this vertex out, and that's supposed to start to be the shape of the nose here. So if we go back to the turbo smooth at the top, see now you have a little pointy nose. And that's just one vertex I pulled forward. Obviously you would continue to define it, so you would either add more control edges and shape the nose a little bit more at the edit poly level. Because if we look at the low resolution model, it's just a really simple point. So obviously you would add a vertical edges here and try to shape the nostril a little bit, and that would give your nose a bit more shape.
So the advanced students, you should do at least transformations, so you can see how you can transform and actually record from the animal to yourself. First semester students, even just making few noses and faces, that will be enough. So it depends how you guys spend your 15 hours per week. We have 2 weeks to do this exercise. But you can see how cool this is, right? You can see why they use it in a lot of our entertainment movies, Hollywood, Shrek, Spider-Man, they use this software.
Right, so here if I wanted to make the eye a little bit shorter so it's not so tall, I could pull that edge down. So you see you can start to shape it like this.
And you can Google grid face or grading animation, and you're gonna see a lot of examples and images on Google. Then you can see how you can transform a face once you put a grid around the face, extrude, And if you guys want to connect it to the Fibonacci series and the golden section, there's a whole theory about faces that follow that proportion, and you can actually study it with that grid. So people that want to go a little bit deeper with connecting it to the previous assignment.
And here, because we don't want to model the eye twice, we can add a modifier called symmetry. And so this will help us mirror what we did on one side to the other side. So here under the symmetries parameters, we have the mirror axis that you want to mirror on. So by default it was set to X. I just changed that to the Y axis. So it's mirroring what I did on one side to the other. And then here there's a little flip option in case what you had done was on the opposite side and you wanted to mirror the other way. So you can toggle the flip option. See, so now I have the two eyes by only doing one.
And what's the line in the middle?
Which line in the middle?
Right there. Or is that just a shadow?
Oh, it's just a shadow, yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. So that should give you, like, you can see the mouth and, you know, the eyebrows, and you can, that's why they hire a lot of animators, right? And that should give you enough information. We'll do the mouth, and then it should give you enough commands for you to manipulate a face, and that you're actually discovering your personality test.
And so we'll do the mouth with an extrude as well.
Oh no! Thank you so much.